Hello and welcome to From the Booth, the Arizona Talking Book Library podcast. This is Cassidy.
Hi, this is Sarah, and we have a special guest star with us today.
Hi, I'm Kevin Osborne from the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled.
Welcome, Kevin, to, what is this, our...
Episode 4?
Is it 4? It's episode 4.
It is episode 4. And is this your first time in the state of Arizona?
No. I came here for a wedding like 10 years ago. I learned all about alkali water in Sedona.
Oh.
The wedding happened in Sedona?
Yeah. All I really remember was like I encountered javelinas on a sidewalk.
Okay. Yes, welcome to Arizona.
I graduated from college in 2004, so everyone out there doing math, now you know how old I am. And for those who don't remember, 9/11 was a couple years before that. Mm-hmm. And it really, really, really decimated the economy. There was no job market. And I majored in religion, which is super profitable and employable. So I had a lot of trouble finding work. And so I took a job teaching English in South Korea. So I taught English at a hagwon, and it was cool. Got to live in South Korea, whole thing. And then, so after a while of teaching English and dealing with kids, I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I'm going to go back to America. I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, I think I want to be a librarian because I want to work somewhere quiet, and I want to work somewhere with smart people.
Are you going to say when you just sit and read all day?
Well,
okay.
I perhaps was under the illusion that there would be more time to sit and read. So then I found out where I went to undergrad actually had an NLS program. I was like, oh, I guess I'll just go back there. That's convenient. And I did. And I focused foolishly because I was like, oh yeah, quiet. I was like, oh, I'm going to focus on school libraries and middle schoolers. Like that made sense. And then I ended up working at a Title I elementary school in South Florida for a couple of years, which was definitely not quiet at all. Just, children. So my initial goal, I duped myself in, and by the time I was a couple of years into school, I was like, well, there's no turning back. And that's how I ended up being a librarian.
Yeah, well, I think it's just such an interesting thing how, maybe back, when libraries were first starting to become a part of, every town in America, right? Like, maybe they did start to be out, as quieter places with the traditional, librarian going shh, right. Quiet zone. But now, libraries are such places of community, and there's programming, and, you can ask for, resume help or English classes. There's so many things that you can do at a library other than just, access collections, which of course is still an important part. But, yeah. Even here, even though, as most of our patrons know, we send everything through the mail or online through, to your device through BARD, we're still trying to increase our programming, like our culture passes and our BARD device advice classes that we have. So, even though we're trying to make it, as much of an in-person experience as you can get, considering we do everything remotely.
So Kevin, thank you again for joining us. And as a somewhat new staff member of NLS, can you speak a bit about your role?
Sure. I'm the head of the network services section.
I was going to say, you have an official role, but what do you tell your friends and family?
Yeah, so your listeners already know what Talking Books is, so that takes half the explanation away, which is great. So the country is divided into 4 conferences. That's how we kind of separate our network libraries. So there's North, South, Midlands, and West. So those 4 have 2 consultants who serve as the people who interpret policy and procedure for the network librarians at those libraries. So I supervise those 2 consultants. So I'm kind of like the head interpreter of policy and procedure in the network library manual and all kinds of other stuff. I'm also the liaison to the United States Postal Service. So everything we send goes out free material for the blind. And that is a very confusing process that most people don't know about, including a lot of people in the Postal Service. So I spend a lot of time making sure stuff gets where it's supposed to be and explaining that customers shouldn't have to ever pay postage returning stuff. You hear stories about people like, oh, I'm going to return my player. And then the postal's like, oh, that weighs 50 pounds. And no, it's free. It's free. So anything to or from a customer between this library and their home is free. Get the whole thing going. So I do that. I also supervise training for network staff. So whenever we get a new product or a new procedure or whatever, my employee, the lovely Paula, is like our lead instructor. So I work with her. So the new digital talking book machine is coming, the DA2, which is it's kind of like your old beloved DA, but now the button arrangement is ever so slightly different, and it can connect to Wi-Fi. So if you have a Bard account, you can sync up your talking book machine to Bard, and it'll pull down your books to the device. And there's some other neat stuff about it. The power cord actually comes out. It's a USB-C now, so you don't have to have like that long like dragon tail everywhere you go. It's black instead of like blue and gray and yellow and stuff, but I have one.
Ease of use, is it relatively easy?
It is the same. The only trick is setting up your Wi-Fi the first time is kind of an ordeal because it doesn't have a QWERTY keyboard, doesn't have a regular keyboard. You could plug one in with the USB to type in your stuff, or if you can have someone who can help you out, or if you know how to do it yourself, you can open up like Notebook, like the super basic file word processor on Windows, and you just put in the name of your wireless network and the password in the next line, like 1-2, and save it with a specific file type. And then if you plug that in to the machine and turn it on, it'll pull down your Wi-Fi settings. So we're all gonna go live on that later. Not on the podcast, sorry, it'll be the most boring thing in the world. So I do supervised training.
Okay.
And then there's another employee on my team who is kind of like the consultant for the internet, if that makes any sense. So there's a lot of back-end databases that customers never have to deal with. You'll hear people talk about NLDB and PIMS and AAA and all these other things. She is the wizard that makes those work.
Oh, okay.
So she is kind of like this third consultant to the network. So like if Erin, who's in charge here, right, if she has a problem with one of the databases, instead of reaching out to her network consultant, she might actually reach out to that woman to say, hey, I need help with the survey or this, that, or the other, and they put that all together. So that's my team.
And
6 months.
Yes.
And once upon a time, I was a network librarian in Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, right.
I'm one of the few, I don't even know what to call it, like both sides of the fence people. But like as I said before, I'm old, and like it was like there were cartridges on a shelf, and we got them, and they said the name of the book on them, and we like wrote the person's address on a piece of paper and sent it to them. There's none of this super cool 10 books on a cartridge automatic show up stuff.
Listen, it used to be delivered on horseback, so
Yeah.
Donkey books.
Yeah. Well, it must be so cool that you're in this role to, look back from where, even just our program started 10, 20 years ago to how far we've come and how many awesome things we're able to offer to our patrons. So
yeah, because it just slowly been evolving, as we all learned from our past episodes where we talk about history. But it used to be only like one book on a cartridge, and now some people can have 10 books. I don't know. But
Yeah. I mean, it used to be like cassette tapes.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And then those were a whole thing, and rewind and whatever.
Mhm.
And before that, allegedly, there were vinyl records, and then there was some like these other records that were made out of like
They're
something
bendable,
else.
right?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were like
No,
really thick.
yeah, I think
Oh.
we have some of those because we have a display. If anyone ever comes to visit the library, we do have a display in our front lobby of where we've been. So we have, one of our little record players up there and a cassette machine too that we used. So those used to go out to patrons. So, and they're very cool to look at. But again, our current system of the nice digital players and Bard, which is just on your phone, is a lot easier to carry around.
Yes. I mean, that
So-
stuff used to weigh a zillion pounds. Like you'd get all of these records in this huge box and try to and then you'd have to have an NLS record player that they sent you, and which was gigantic, and the needles and all this stuff. So it's certainly more convenient. And one of the things I always try to tell people about Bard kind of scares some people because it's very tech, right? It's an app, it's on a device, whatever. And if you're not really comfortable with technology already, and if you've got like a visual impairment, it can be that much harder because there's almost no tactile feedback on like an iPhone or whatever. But there's like other ways you can access Bard, particularly with some help, so that you can have all this stuff at your fingertips. And it's just so much easier and so much faster, and you can do it on the go. And if you can get someone to help you out with a smartphone or like a Kindle with Wi-Fi, like even if you're at McDonald's, you can connect to their Wi-Fi. you can get all these books. And like, this is a down the road plan. We're working on it, but we are hoping to find a way to make it easier to send books. Like the staff at the library can send books directly to a person's BARD account. So you can technically do that now. Like a person can log into BARD admin and send a book to your profile, blah, blah. But down the road, when people get the new player and they have Wi-Fi at their home, they will be able to just like connect, and the books that they asked for on their BARD list will just show up, basically.
That'll be good.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
you call your reader's advisor, say, here's what I'm looking for. And if it's on BARD, they'll put it on your list, and it'll be super cool when it's dialed in.
Can we talk about when people might start to receive them, or is that still on the?
We're at like striking distance. So, on 1 week ago, every network library was sent one in the mail for the staff to learn how to use it.
Okay.
So that takes a while. And then I'm co-running a pilot with a few libraries to get a few out in customer hands just to make sure everything works.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get them in people's hands to figure out what we didn't think through.
Exactly.
Like, do these buttons work? Mm-hmm. Or like, oh no, this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we have very high hopes. Like we're pretty sure it is basically done. So I think in the next few months, the first wave of them will arrive.
Awesome.
So that's not going to be a one-for-one exchange. So not everyone who has a machine will necessarily get a DA2. Veterans get preference first. That is the law. And then ideally, right, like the DA2 is neat and it's sleek and it's really rad. But if you don't use Wi-Fi, it's not going to do anything better for you.
Okay.
So it's really like if you've got Wi-Fi in your home and someone can help you set it up, you can really benefit from the DA2 features. If that's not something that you have, you're just going to have to like learn how to use a new machine slightly, and it might not be worth the effort.
Right. And because I have had some patrons ask me, when the DA2s do roll out, are they going to have to switch over to the new machine? And that is not the case, especially when they're first rolling out and we're having a smaller number of machines to start. It'll be, again, on kind of a first come, first interested basis. So for any listeners that are not interested in the DA2, that is completely fine. You can stick with what you got.
That's a good point to bring up for sure, because, there's still things we're learning. If they get the DA2, do they have to send back their DA1?
They are supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, so we tend to defer to the libraries for what's best. In the manual, in the policy, in the rules, if you keep one device, you should send the other one back.
Right.
We've realized that a lot of people maybe got their digital talking book machine 10 years ago, and they probably don't have that cardboard box. So we're making sure that there's cardboard boxes available for order. So people can send them back. Now, what you could certainly do is, like, if you are the end user there and you're like, oh, DA2 sounds cool. I have Wi-Fi. I want to do this. And you get it, and you just don't like it. Send it back. That's fine.
Okay.
Whatever. Like, I don't think we're not going to force new technology into anybody's hands. And we know we all have formats that we like. If the cartridge really does it for you, and that's how you want to do it, and like that machine's got a perfect spot next to your couch, and you're like, that's fine, we're not going to make it change anything. And a lot of people are worried, like, oh, I have to have Wi-Fi, or it doesn't. Someone somehow out there got heard that the new thing's Wi-Fi only, and it doesn't play cartridges.
Okay.
It's not true.
No, that's
still
good
plays
to know.
Cartridges. You can just also do Wi-Fi if you want to.
Okay. No, that's good to know for sure, because like you said, there's people that will still prefer cartridges, which, like you said, fine. Yeah. What matters is they're getting their books.
That's right.
Yeah, and again, this is another, great opportunity to say, if you do ever have questions or want to discuss, if you're not sure about starting a new way to listen to our books, you can always call your library, and we're, happy to talk it through with you, provide more information. So, definitely use this as a resource.
Well, this question seems kind of like a redundant. Is there a service or resource that NLS offers now that you're especially excited about?
I think BARD is the coolest thing ever, and I know a lot of users are kind of hesitant to learn it because it's a little spooky. Like if you look at the national statistics, cartridges are like 75% of checkouts, and BARD is about 25%. And I think a lot of people thought BARD was going to like leaps and bounds blow out traditional. And it's a lot like public libraries, which is where most of my time is that like ebooks are very popular, but like paper books remain popular.
Yeah.
And so like when Kindle came out, some people really adopted it and loved it, and other people were like, I don't like it, I don't like the screen, whatever. And like that's fine. You don't have to like it. And there's studies that maybe paper is better. I don't know. But I also, when I worked in public libraries and I oversaw collections development budget, Libby is the big audiobook service for public libraries. There's also Hoopla. There's a couple other ones. And they are radically expensive for your library. A lot of people don't realize that. So, like, you know, so if I download a menu or like a recipe from the internet, I can email it to all of you for free, right? An audiobook that a public library buys, they can't do that with. They get one copy, and it's like you could go to buy an audiobook for like $40. The one the library buys is like $75.
So they're paying for licensing.
They're paying for the license. And then a lot of times it goes away after a year, it goes away after 12 circulations or whatever. So the audiobooks are super duper expensive, and that's why most public libraries can't have as many as they would like to.
Right.
And I know a lot of people out there don't know about NLS, or they don't know about BARD or whatever.
Yeah.
So what I am jazzed about is BARD becoming a little more popular, more people learning about it, people who are digital talking books users starting to use it on a DA2 and like tell their friends, tell their family. And one of my big priorities now that I'm in this job is to focus on print disabilities, which is kind of a nebulous term, and it's kind of tricky to define, but it's not necessarily about visual reading anymore.
I've learned that just from working here. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people are like, oh, like you use the library for the blind. And then handicapped, and like, oh, that's like blind, but like with like you can't hold a book. The law changed, so print disabilities encompasses a lot of things. Some learning disabilities, others don't qualify. But like dyslexia is a huge one. And there are so many children who are at the age where they are being exposed to reading for the first time. They're in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, whatever. And they have a reading disability that is just now getting diagnosed. And what I'm optimistic about is that as our service expands and more people learn about it, there are going to be more and more very young children who start using our service. And they will be able to have access to books that they would have otherwise never really been able to do. So a lot of what NLS is people who were readers of paper books. They have macular degeneration or whatever, and so they get to keep enjoying books in a new format. What I'm excited about doing is identifying groups of people who never had the opportunity and giving them a new format so that they can access all this cool material. And it's a whole new group of users that prior didn't qualify and now do.
I think it's great. You always hear stories about kids who, or anyone who, if they're not big readers, it's not so much because they didn't care for books, it's because some undiagnosed or something, and they just didn't realize these alternative options. So
right. And, I used to be a school teacher, and you're teaching fundamental literacy to kids and even alphabet phonics, decoding, sight words, all that stuff. Like, eventually it becomes apparent certain kids, it's not that like some people just pick things up faster or slower, it's that some people like it's not sticking and there's something else to it.
Right.
And they get referred to a reading specialist ideally, and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
A lot of those early literacy specialists in schools don't have any idea NLS exists, because if they've ever heard of it, they thought it was the National Library for the Blind.
Right.
This student's not blind, they don't qualify.
Yeah.
So that's my big thing. We're going to try to spend a lot more time reaching out to schools and just, serving more people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because if it's in line with that all may read, right? We're making sure everyone gets access to books.
Exactly.
Because we all love to read here. So.
I assume you love to read, sir.
I guess.
What? Okay.
But what do you love to read? Because that's our key question for all of our, and by all of our guest speakers, our second guest on the podcast is, what are you currently reading? What's downloaded on your
What
board?
is on your nightstand
What is
slash
on my
downloaded?
nightstand? My nightstand is like this embarrassing stack of books that I haven't read a lot of.
Nothing wrong with that.
My sister-in-law got me a copy of Martyr for the holidays,
That's been on my TBR forever.
which I just listened to on Bard instead. I didn't love it, but I think, and this is something I think a lot of guests can relate to, is that if the narrator doesn't click for you, it can be a problem. And it's an imperfect world.
Yes.
But this is the fun part where I get to say, did you know that NLS is the only people who have an audio copy of Catcher in the Rye?
What? No.
Because the author and the estate never gave permission for an audiobook, but because we're the Library of Congress and we have copyright control, we made one.
That's amazing. No.
So you heard it here first, everyone. If you and your friends want to have a Catcher in the Rye audiobook club, tell them to sign up and become patrons of their services. So,
right? And think of all the kids in probably like 8th grade, who are having trouble reading or whatever, and there's nothing. They can't go on Audible. They can't go buy it. Come on down. But that's it. So I have a giant pile of books. That's on the top of it. There are many more under it that I've forgotten about entirely.
Okay.
I'm looking out there for Audience World. Like most people in the libraries are really heavy-duty readers. And I always felt like a bit of an outsider because I wasn't a really heavy reader when I was a kid. I don't know if I was like necessarily like a reluctant reader, if I've got some kind of like undiagnosed whatever. I like comic books. I like cookbooks.
That's reading.
I read way too much Reddit. Like I go down a rabbit hole on the internet about like, why are flowers purple or whatever. And
you start with one search and end up on...
Yeah, then you learn just like an endless stream of wacky facts. And that's all reading, right? Like that's all taking in text.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a bad literary person. Now that said, I also then go look at my like checkout history and I'm like, well, clearly I'm checking some stuff out. So let me bust out my Bard here.
I was just going to say how many books, because I always joke how we were comparing how many books we've read in 2024. What year is this? 25?
We're in 2025 now, yes.
I say I have two lists. The number of books I started and the number of books I actually finished. Vastly different.
You know, I was talking to someone, I was like, that's when you're truly an adult is when you can say, I don't care if I put this book down.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
I maybe I wasted 300 pages. I don't really care how it
I don't
ends.
care either. How many books do you have downloaded to Bard?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh gosh.
What's your damage, Sarah? What do you have downloaded right now?
Are you ready for this? 106.
Whoa! Impressive.
No, that's actually scary. Am I going to read these? No.
No. Well, that's cool, though, because it's not like you're holding it from somebody else.
But I should probably clear them off my... How many do you have?
I am still at the same number I was last episode, which is 23 books downloaded.
All right.
Still working my way through the same ones.
It's okay. What are you working your way through?
Right now I'm reading All Systems Red, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries series.
I love Murderbot.
Yeah, and they just announced that they're doing a TV show for it.
I heard.
Murderbot's great.
I'm loving it so far. If we have any sci-fi fans out there,
I mentioned this last time, and it remains true. That's on... One day I will read that book, I promise.
It's really fast.
Like,
short.
I've heard nothing but great things about the whole series, and even from other libraries I've worked at, other people I've worked with, they love it.
Yeah, Murderbot's great because, like, you know, typically sequels kind of, like, they're not always as good, but because Murderbot develops as a character, which is hilarious because he's a robot who murders, like, the way Murderbot approaches things changes too, but it's still hilarious because it's a murderous robot's perspective on things.
But like, it's a murderous robot that loves trash TV, right? Isn't it? So?
And I can relate to that so much because I also love trash TV.
Yeah, like,
I'm not a murder bot, but I love trash
Murderbot
TV.
basically has Bard, but only downloads just like
Love Island, Love Planet, I guess, because it's in space.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's
he'll like download like 7. So I did decide though. So my favorite author is Bret Easton Ellis, who's like from the 80s, wrote American Psycho. That's probably the biggest one. And then wrote a couple other ones. They're all pretty much the kind of the same vibe. I really liked them. They got this weird bleak 80s I don't know. But a new one came out post-pandemic, and I just couldn't get into it.
Oh, by him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think it's the Shards. Maybe it is the Shards. It doesn't matter. It was weird for me because I've never had a book from him that I couldn't get into, and I still haven't finished it. And then, so my thing I do when I can't paper book it is I BARD it, and I just kind of force myself to listen to it like on walks and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Still haven't done it, but I was like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna reread American Psycho.
At least you know that you don't have to return it anytime soon.
Exactly.
Right. There's no guilt. Like, it's just I have a kind of like a cheap iPhone, but I think there's enough space.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it funny how authors that you love, but then they're something about their writing changes.
And just like sometimes when, which I always love it when authors branch out into different genres or topics, you read it and you're like, oh, this sounds so good. And then you're done. You're like, yeah. 3 stars on Storygraph. So, and that's one of the great things is, it's really fun to challenge yourself to read books that you may not have picked up or may not have imagined yourself reading. And then if you like it, it's great. If not, it's totally okay.
And you didn't have to spend $45 on a hardcover.
Exactly. That's why I love the reading challenges that give you a list of read a sci-fi book, read a Western. Do it. But.
I had this employee, a colleague, and she was very into reading seasonally. So, like, she would read wintry stuff in winter and scary stuff in October.
Totally.
And I was like, yeah, okay. So I read Salem's Lot for Halloween, and this is apparently a very divisive statement. That book is not scary.
Oh,
I would agree with that. I would agree. It's atmospheric.
Like, this book terrified me, and I'm like,
yeah, I would argue it's good for like you said, like the Halloween like spooky vibes. But I would argue that it is more of like a suspense thriller than straight up like horror.
It's just like, oh, I guess there's vampires.
Yeah.
And they're so sloppy about it. Like the next day, there's like 70 new. I'm like, they're gonna run out of people. Like this, how big is this town in Maine?
Oh my God. I guess there's vampires.
But, just like and even like they're like, what, Parkins Gillespie? He's like getting gas and he's talking to the main character. He's like, they're all turning into vampires. I'm leaving town. And I'm like, what? You know they're vampires? Like what? That's my Maine accent. Sorry, I don't know. That's how the author read it.
One of my favorite books by the female author is Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, which is a sci-fi book, but I wouldn't say it's maybe like light sci-fi, but it's like there's enough world building that it's intriguing, but it's not, like you open the book. Some sci-fi books, you open the first page and it's like glossary of terms, a new math system. It's not like that. It's very much, it's really fun because you get like the blend of sci-fi world building and technology, but for being a book that takes place on a planet far away with this, entire other type of being, it's a very human story.
Wasn't she like one of the first well-known female sci-fi?
No, she was definitely a groundbreaker in the science fiction genre. And I think it's a great starting point if there's anyone that wants to get into sci-fi, but you're not sure where to start.
That's me. I should read her.
It's great. I love that book. It's so good.
List. I'm kind of doing the same thing.
Now. No, I'm just kidding. Podcast over. No.
So I was kind of doing the same thing because it was like, it's Women's History Month, like, right? And so I was like, I should really read The Handmaid's Tale. So I downloaded it, and I also downloaded Parable of the Sower.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Octavia
Butler is one of my favorite authors.
Octavia Spencer, who's the actress.
No, Octavia Spencer's also great.
But also Octavia Butler, like, she's also one of like the few well-known sci-fi, and that being said, I'm not a big sci-fi reader either, so there's probably a lot of female sci-fi.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I like sci-fi, but it's almost like high fantasy versus fantasy, and then like hard sci-fi versus more like...
there are levels I've come to discover.
Like late futurism, kind of like Liam Gibson-y is more my thing. If there's like you said, there's like, there's a new race of half robots who are also a hive mind, and they use these special boats, and you're like, okay, like I can't do a glossary.
I get that. No, that's like why sci-fi is. I want to read more of it, and I probably have to start with the.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is it's like that's one thing that I like about reading multiple books at once is if it's like, okay, today I have the strength to read through this glossary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I can tackle something that's a little more intense. But other days I'm like, my brain cell is not here, so it's time for cozy fantasy.
That's how I am too.
Or,
I am a mood reader.
Yeah.
Because I need, like my car commutes, I need a certain type of book to get me through that. And
Yes,
understandable. So,
and again, that's the great thing about our library here is we have a book for every mood. So, and we're always adding more.
And I listen, if I start a book, I'm not into it. I am not the person, I will not feel like I have to finish it, and that's okay. I know. I have friends who will force themselves to finish it, and I always say, why? Why? You don't have to.
I used to be that person. Like, I'm going to suffer for the next week. Like, or just...
But you hear what you're
don't.
saying? You're going to suffer.
Yeah.
Like, why?
It's like jogging. You're like, this is horrible. But somehow if I finish doing it, I'll be happier. And then you do it, and you're like, I'm not.
Yeah.
All I get is the satisfaction of saying you get to say, like, not only did I not like that book, I finished it.
Not only did I...
And I'm sure I didn't like it. And everyone on Goodreads has to hear about it.
Thank you for joining us for our 4th episode of From the Booth. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll tune in for the next one. So until then, later, Gators.
Later.
I like it.
Florida.
We're trying a new sign off.
Yes, thank you for your time. Bye.
Bye.